This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
Hey, welcome once again, my friends, to the show World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment. I'm your show host, Carl Gruber. I'm super excited to bring this show the Best of World Awakenings Part 2. While Part 1 of the Best of the show features some of my amazing guests from the beginning, when I started it in June 2018, I featured even more incredible guests who are experts, master teachers, and icons of the world of metaphysics, spirituality, quantum science, and enlightenment. So join me for an awesome retrospective of shows with people like Dr. Joe Vitale was my guest on episode number 66. He is perhaps one of the most well-known and high-profile teachers of the law of attraction. He is also a master teacher of the Hawaiian spiritual practice called Ho'oponopono. He was a featured teacher in the global hit movie The Secret and numerous other movies. And he's authored 85 books on the law of attraction, spirituality, and how to create the dream life you desire. Also known as Mr. Fire, what Dr. Joe Vitale has to say in this show will shift your life into high gear toward your ultimate success. Well, that's interesting, too, because, both of us being from Ohio, and I told you before we came on, I spent 20 years, plus years in radio as a disc jockey, but I was also a copywriter and a production director. So I understand the hypnotic, to be persuasive and draw the customer in. So this is something I've got to have, and it is a real thing. And you honed your writing with that.
I would attribute all of my success in all the different areas. I'm a musician at this point. I have 15 albums. I've been in 20 or more movies besides The Secret. I have my own TV show that has been airing on 1,000 platforms all over the world now. I traveled to countries I never thought I would go to all around the world. I would attribute all of my successes to copywriting. I have learned how to write. I have learned how to speak. And I did all of it with the idea that a copywriter has to think of the other person. What most people do is think of themselves when they communicate, whether they put up a website, it's all about themselves, or whether they send a sales letter out, or they get on stage. I learned that I have to think of the other person. I can talk about myself, but it better be in a way that's interesting to them. And I did it everywhere, even when I was in the movie The Secret. I still remember being invited. I still remember being in a hotel room in Chicago with cameras on me, not knowing that this was going to become a world phenomenon, and them asking questions. My answers were spoken in the style of a copywriter.
Yeah. So
I would think, and even today, that my ability to speak, to tell stories, to write, that all came from hypnotic writing and copywriting.
And having been a copywriter myself, and I do writing quite a bit myself, it gives you the understanding of a formula of writing in an organized manner in which, and yes, it does make you objective and think of sitting in the reader's mind and eyes. Yeah.
It's pure Dale Carnegie, actually. Dale Carnegie wrote one of the greatest books of all time, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a masterpiece. I've read it several times. I wish I had written it. But he chiseled his words, and he made it very clear that everybody is interested in one thing, themselves. And if you can speak to their interest, they'll listen to you. And that's what I had to learn, and that's what I had to apply. And again, I've done it in those early days with marketing. And then when I was invited to be in the movie, because that was the next big wave, 2006 comes along, The Secret comes out. I'm put on Larry King. I'm put it, Oprah does pretty much 3 infomercials on The Secret, and The Secret hasn't stopped yet. And it was in 2006 that it came out. That shot me into orbit. Mm-hmm. I might have had a name as an internet marketer and copywriter and so forth, and pretty well respected, I think. But when the movie The Secret came out, it put me in a different category. Now I'm the self-help teacher. And as I wrote more books, became more of a spiritual teacher. And it's pretty rare for people to know the history going all the way back to 30 years to figure out that, oh, he was also a copywriter, a marketer.
I want to talk more about, I've heard that you state that your mission is to inspire people to go for and achieve their dreams, and everything that you do is in that direction of awakening people and dissolving their limiting beliefs, right?
You're absolutely correct, and I'm impressed that you did enough research to know that. But I feel it's my life mission to inspire people, but not just inspire them to go for and achieve their dreams. It's one thing to get them all excited, like at a pep rally for a football game, but it's another thing to get them all excited and they go home and do something. And that's what I'm more interested in. I want to inspire people to go and actually achieve whatever their life mission happens to be. And it can be big, it can be small, but each one of us has a contribution, a little piece of the puzzle that would help make the world work. So I think my piece of the puzzle is to light a fire under people and show them whatever ways that I have found or created that will help them attract what they want. That's what it's all about for me.
And thus the name Mr. Fire, which
that's true. There was a woman I knew back in Houston. She spontaneously started calling me Mr. Fire. And I said, why are you calling me Mr. Fire? She said, every time I get with you, you light a fire under me to go and write my book or do something. And when I see you with other people, you always light a fire under them. You're encouraging them. You're Mr. Fire. And so I put a website up called MrFire.com, and I let that be my moniker, and it's stayed all this time.
In episode number 117, we feature another one of the stars of the movie The Secret, Marie Diamond. Now, not only has Marie been honored by royalty for her humanitarian work with the title of Dame, but she is also one of the world's best teachers of the law of attraction, Feng Shui, and she's an energy master. Marie is also a well-known global transformation and motivational leader, and an international best-selling author. So many people know you from your appearance in the movie The Secret, but you have expertise far beyond the law of attraction. What I would like to know is what made you interested in studying, practicing, and teaching all these beautiful, enlightening things?
Well, I think I was very early on already. When I was like 7, I was already having a spiritual mentor that taught me meditation. So I started meditating when I was 7 years old. And that was for me very important because I saw energy. So I was a clairvoyant child. And so I was not able to handle a lot of what I was seeing at that time. If there were wandering spirits, if there were auras or chakras or the energy of houses. So by learning to meditate, that calmed me down and gave me some sense of I had control over things, instead of being, overwhelmed by the energies that I saw. But I would say really something shifted for me when I was 15, and I was run over by a truck and had a near-death experience.
Whoa.
And when I was on the other side, where there were all beings of light, I was given the message that I had to go back and that I was here to enlighten more than 500 million people. Now, I had no idea what that meant at that time. So 500 million people, like today, I would start up a TikTok channel or YouTube or Instagram or whatever, right? But at that time, I had no idea first what it meant because I come from a Catholic background in Belgium. So, we don't talk about enlightenment. But I just felt it was about making a difference. Yeah. And so I focus every day about that message. So I would say every mornings praying to God, meditating, I am here to enlighten more than 500 million people. Show me how. That was my catchphrase. Yeah. And as I was doing that, I started seeing where I could be of help. Yeah, I attracted, of course, people that needed help. If that was on the street or in the classroom, I was only 15, right? But I was also very, confused about why I attracted this accident. And so when I met my spiritual mentor again, I asked him, what did I do wrong? I mean, what happened that I had to go to this accident? And he said at that time, because I was aware of the law of attraction, I was aware of positive thoughts about gratitude, I was aware of a lot of things at that time already. And he told me that I had bad feng shui. Now, at that time, again, I had no clue what that meant. And he explained to me that my environment was affecting my subconscious mind and that I better move out of the room that I was staying in. What I really hated, that room. It was just like gloomy. This is my sister's room. The wrong things were there. And then I moved to a place where I decorated myself. I painted it in certain colors that he suggested. I did not have posters, so I drew my own posters, and I wanted to have friends and I wanted to have romance because I was beaten up at school. I was very bullied because I was too nerdy for them. I was interested in mathematics and religion. I mean, it was not a normal 15-year-old, I would say, So that was really interesting. After doing and changing some of my basic first feng shui steps, like literally my life turned around. The bullies stopped bullying me. They became friendly. I started having friends. I started my first boyfriend. So it was like within a few weeks, things shifted tremendously. And as from that moment on, I was aware that there was a part of the law of attraction that is not just a mindset. It's not just how I feel. It's not just about my destiny, my karma, but it's also about where I live and sleep and what surrounds me. And it's only, when I was about 30 that I started really practicing more in-depth feng shui, studying with grandmasters in Malaysia. But till that moment, I was just looking of making a difference,
My guest on episode number 79 was Eileen McKusick, a pioneer in the fields of human biofield, therapeutic sound, and electric health. Eileen is the originator of the sound therapy method, biofield tuning, and the founder of the Biofield Tuning Institute. What she has to say will cause a dynamic shift in your understanding of the power of energy and sound in healing, not only for yourself, but other people as well.
Since 1987, I've been a voracious student, learning everything I can about how to be healthy on every level, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, financially, all of that, all the things that like Tony Robbins or Jack Canfield, like what are we doing? We're trying to figure out a better, easier way. We're trying to make sense of the human experience and optimize ourselves, and then in the process help others to do the same. There's a lot of people really struggling with a lot of dysregulation from trauma inputs and difficulty, addiction, all kinds of stuff, really looking for help, looking for something that's really going to help stabilize them, regulate them, allow them to relax and to expand into their potential. And I was certainly one of those people. I spent a lot of time and money and energy trying to figure it out, how to master the game, how to master my body, how to master my relationship with food, and how to really enjoy life, which is not the easiest thing to do.
From what I saw, you had a bit of a struggle when you were a youngster, overcoming and with your marriage and things. And once you stumbled upon tuning force and things started turning around, right? I think you cured plantar warts on your bottom of your foot and everything with it.
Well, I cured a lot. I suffered, even though I spent decades reading books and, getting CD sets from Nightingale Conan, like really, doing the things. Back in 2010, I would say I was broke. I was in debt. I was in constant low-level mid-back pain. I had miserable digestion gas, bloating, heartburn, indigestion, stomach aches. I mean, it was really misery. And when your stomach doesn't feel good, there's a reason why we use the term belly aching, right? And belly aching, and like, oh, my husband, my kids, my men, and then I was kind of a mess, and I was also an overworker. At that time, I was going to school full time. I was seeing clients, and then I started teaching biofield tuning as well, and I was a mom. And I started teaching in 2010. Now, I started practicing with tuning forks in 1996. And between 1996 and 2010, I developed a method, which I didn't set out to do, but it just sort of developed itself. And the method that I call biofield tuning, I discovered was really helpful for people. Just what we were talking about how people are looking for something that regulates them. I discovered that this approach that I was doing, not just on and over the body, but in the atmosphere around the body. When I started working in the atmosphere around the body with just pure tones, my therapeutic outcomes became really, really dramatic. And people were getting out of pain, out of anxiety, getting unstuck, becoming more creative. And I realized that I kind of had a moral obligation to bring this into the world. But at the same time, even in 2010, it's very different now. Certainly in 1996, when I started, I encountered a tremendous amount of skepticism, cynicism, snide pushback, because there's something about tuning forks for healing. It just sounds really fruity. It sounds really airy-fairy. And so when I realized that I needed to bring it to the world, I decided that I should get some degrees to make it appear less fruity. Unfortunately, there was a Vermont State College 5 minutes down the road from my house. And I went to that as an adult, and I got my undergraduate and graduate degrees in 5 years. And then I wrote a master's thesis called Exploring the Effects of Audible Sound on the Human Body and its Biofield. So I learned to understand what the phenomena was that I was working with from an academic and scientific perspective. And then that became the basis for tuning the human biofield.
One of my most popular shows, episode number 64, featured vocal transformational coach and professional singer Maryn Azoff, and is probably one of the more different and interesting shows I have done to date. Her approach to singing and sharing is always from the heart, is deeply spiritual and steeped in truth, wisdom, and love. Maryn is also a singer and member of two bands, Tribe of Love and Kura Kura. She can help you unleash the potential and power of your voice to help you blossom both physically and deeply spiritually. But this is the first time I've gone to an area on vocal transformation. What exactly is it?
Vocal transformation is a modality that I created that is, it's a fusion of a bunch of different paths that come together to unlock the full potential of the human voice. And I know in my bio there, in my website, it talks about singing from the heart and sharing in these spaces, but the majority of the vocal transformation work is actually not for singing, although it will bring you your amazing singing voice, because the voice is the voice is the voice. But really, it's about unlocking the potential that's in the frequency of the human voice. Mm-hmm. Right. So our voice is our soul's dynamic life urge for truthful expression. It's how our body and our soul come together and create the world. And the vocal transformation work is really based around very ancient yoga. So the majority of the Western world we see now are kind of working off of a yoga sect, which is Krishnamacharya's yoga with the postures. That's about 300 years old, but this information is about 5,000 years old.
I've heard quite a bit that sound and frequencies has quite a bit to do with meditation and spiritual growth.
Yeah, so you think about how now, as we see people, and you're right, more and more people are waking up because it's time, right? And it's necessary time for us to awaken, because the human being has the ability to channel so much cosmic energy into our own body. So the ancient yoga, which talks about the chakra system, right? There's 7 energy centers that run up the midline of our body through our spinal column. A human has many more than 7 chakras. There's tons of energy coming off of us and moving in all omnidirectionally, right? But we have 7 main energy centers, and those energy centers represent different levels of frequency that we can hold within our body, 7 realms that we can actually encompass within our own body. And right now, humans are stuck somewhere between 3 and 4. right? The majority of us are spending our energy at the third chakra, right? Which is the seat of the ego. And with that, that's why we have a warring planet, right? The ego is our false sense of separation. And so in that third chakra sits all of our insecurity and our self-doubt and our shame and our guilt and all of that. But also in that third chakra sits all of your confidence and your personal power and your ability to catalyze creation into the world, right? So these 7 layers of energy that the human can hold, we're actually the channel to bring evolution to the planet itself. Right. So my work with the human voice is, this is information that's 5,000 years old. In the Rig Veda, which is the most ancient yogic text, they basically say that the human voice is unmanifest form. And everything that we move through this chakra system and then create into a waveform pattern that goes out into the world collapses into physical reality. And for me, that truth, when I heard that and when I resonated with that, we are so scared to use this faculty. If you think about when you're born, you cry. The very first thing you do is you let out a big scream. And if you have a baby, or if you have held a baby or been around a baby long enough, you know that this little body can create sound that seems like, how does that much sound and range, and how can it go on forever and ever? And it comes out of this little tiny form. And then we grow exponentially from that point, but we diminish our voices and we don't let ourselves make that much sound. But within the power of the frequency of our voice, we have the power to create the world, to manifest our own life. And that means physical health for our own body, and thusly for the whole earth body, because it's one thing, right? And it's all working in one universe. It's all working in one connected movement. So everything we put out, we express, becomes part of the whole conversation. Right. So to know how to use that, to know why you have the voice you have and why you use it the way you use it, is the first step of it, right? To understand the psychological development and the emotional development, and how our brain and our cognitive ability gets programmed to leave us in a very small paradigm, like a small version of what we're capable of, so that we can all lock in and plug into like a mainstream society, let's say, right? We can all fit in because that's what means the most to us right now. And then how that limits all of the potential that we have to create real change in the world. And to know that every human voice has that. Every human voice, not just the ones who think they're born with more power, or they're born with more affluence, or they have more opportunity. It has nothing to do with that. It's the vibrational frequency that you're putting out into the electromagnetic field.
Although I have spoken to many guests who have had incredible metaphysical and spiritual experiences, Bill Letson is the very first one who is going to go in depth about his astounding NDE, or near-death experience. Bill Letson is my guest, and after a 35-year career as a California firefighter and forester, he retired. However, before his retirement, he underwent a profound near-death experience where he separated from his physical body, traveled through a star-filled realm, and interacted with some very strange otherworldly beings before returning to his body here on Earth and back to daily life. Bill's incredible description of his out-of-body experience will absolutely blow your mind.
And she said, "This is the orders," and she pushed it in the, she's in a hurry. She's a good nurse, but she pushed it in the, the port, the injection port, and my wife was there, and she said, "Your eyes just rolled back and you fell straight back on the bed."
Oh, wow.
And, I came in there, as far as volume of fluids and stuff, I came in there on my knees, and then, the stuff that she gave me, this new Bane, this synthetic morphine, that's a vasodilator. And so it just, grew the system really big. And so whatever pressure or perfusion I was getting just dropped out. And it happened really super fast. It was like as soon as she put it in. And I wasn't coming back. I don't know any of this, but sometime during that night, I left my body, and I was no longer Bill. I was flying through this star-filled realm, this sea of stars, these colored balls, these orbs. And it was like I was in space, and in that space were all these colored vibrating balls, different colors, different emotions coming off them. And I was just being paraded through. It was like I was being welcomed back. And all I felt was acceptance and belonging and being held and being loved and joy. And that person that I was, it was like, it seemed like it was a joke or something. It was a trick, because I was this huge expanded cloud. I was this huge expanded cloud of awareness, like a huge balloon that went on forever. And it felt like a cool breeze was blowing through every cell, and somebody was pouring honey over my brain. It was running down, and all my, I heard somebody else say this, and it fits. All my cells were giggling with just euphoria, and I've called it, a cosmic orgasm, and it had a very, creative, sensual nature to it. That is the universe, I believe. And I had felt like looking back, I was like, as I was flying along, I was thinking, man, what in the heck was that? Duty as a human. And it's like, I was like, that was rough. And there was nothing rough about my life. It was a charmed life. California surfer with a wonderful family and everything perfect, education. But to me, it was super rough, and it has to do with the emotions, the vibrations that exist here, that are allowed to exist here, and only exist here. And I felt like I'd been in a hot, dark, stuffy closet, and I was released from that, and just huge expanded cloud of awareness with this cool breeze blowing through every cell. And it was euphoria. And I flew along like that for a while. That was definitely a limitless, unbridled realm where everything is possible, and it's eternal and infinite. That was a feeling I had, and I was so happy to be back in that. That's where we all come from. And I was flying along, and then all of a sudden, I was someplace else. I was in this, it was like a clinic or a facility, and there was lighting there. I didn't feel quite as expanded, but I was still incredibly joyful. And so there's indirect lighting. There was equipment hanging from the ceiling and on the walls. There were beds there and tables and things. And it looked like a clinic or a facility of some sort. And right in front of me were these three little hooded guys. And they were overwhelmed with joy to see me. They were bouncing up and down and giggling and turning back and forth to each other. And I was just looking at them like, well, where am I now? And they were saying, how was it? What did you learn? What can you tell us? And, they were very playful and joyful, and they were sweethearts. And, going back to that thing you asked me in the beginning, what was the, coming out of sleep as a child, who was I talking to and giggling with and stuff? And I think it was these guys.
Yeah.
And I think we all have them. I think we all go to these realms. We're just not supposed to know about it. We're supposed to get through what we're going through here. These challenges, making the sacrifices and even suffering here and then, and until we decide we're not going to suffer anymore. We're not going to focus on the bad, and then that sort of ends for us. But yeah, they were, one of them came forward, the three little guys. They were dark hoods and squatty little bodies, and they're about 4 foot tall. And they looked exactly like those guys that Christopher Walken is with in the movie Communion. And I know that's supposed to be a horror film, but I think a lot of those emotions, they come with the music, the vibration in the soundtrack. And I think that it kind of entrains us, and we start to believe this is something to be fearful of. And if you turn the sound off and watch it, those guys are a kick, they're high-fiving him, and they're doing all kinds of fun things, and they're bouncing around, and they're nice guys, and there's kids in that movie. There's kids in that facility, young souls, whatever, and he sees them interact with these children. And so yeah, they looked exactly like that. And I saw the movie years later. It wasn't something I was programmed with. And I mean, like recently, within the last 5 years, I saw a picture of them on a trailer or something, and I'm like, well, what the heck is that? Because that looks exactly like what I saw. And then I watched the movie, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's right there, for everyone to see if they know what they're looking at. So one of them came forward, and he was joyful and chuckling and smiling and stuff. And he looked me up and down really hard, and he turned to the other two and he goes, he doesn't remember us. And they all started giggling wildly. And I was like, well, I kind of remember you guys, but this is all very strange for me all of a sudden. I'm in this cartoon world, and so they were giggling, and they were great. They were wonderful. Felt right at home with them immediately. And then there was this other guy, and he was this tall, wispy guy, and he looked like somebody. I was looking at somebody underwater. He had this spinning nature to him, this like vortex or this like tornado, and he had a big smile, bright eyes, and when he came forward, the top part would separate, and then the rest would like catch up, like this moving, like this moving cyclone or something. And he was, I've said lots of things, that he looked like a Gumby or a walking stick insect. I've tried all these ways to explain it, but yeah, it was an energetic being. I call him the tall, wispy guy. And when he came forward, he was really happy to see me, and I could feel the love he had for me, and it was so powerful that, like when you watch a movie and it's about a dog that gets reunited with his owner or something, and you start to choke up, and you don't want to cry in the theater, and you're feeling your chest expand. And that's what I felt, like 100 times more powerful than I've ever felt here. Wow. And it felt like the proper thing to do was to fall to your knees and break down in uncontrollable crying from love. Like a mother's love for a child. This is, I've come to realize this is why mothers cry when they take their child to kindergarten the first day, because so he came close, and I felt nothing but love. There was this back and forth stuff, and every time I said something, and I didn't have a mouth, I didn't have vocal cords, but everybody should realize that when you transition over, a lot of people don't even know they've died, because the transition is so seamless. And so you're still seeing things, you're still speaking, but of course you don't have eyes or a mouth or vocal cords. So it's just very natural to be back in that divine realm. And so every time I, had little things to say about this and that, and every time I said something, he just had this chuckle, this laugh, and he was chuckling at everything. And little guys were bouncing around and they were giggling. And every time he chuckled, I could feel it inside of me. It was like I was chuckling. And at one point I said, well, I'm in this facility now and I'm not, it's obviously, I'm not going to stay here forever. And so I was like, so what's next? You guys, are we going to do a review of my life and then I can move on? And would you guys like to get started with that? Because I had a taste of that other realm. I just arrived and I'm like, I want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so he just cracked up. When I said, you guys want to get started with that, and he just cracked up and he said, sure, let's do that. How do you want to start? And so I've told a few stories, no big regrets. And it was not a typical life review like you hear people talk about, watching their lives in these little bubble screens and how you affect others and all that. It was none of that. It was just me telling some stories and nobody was listening. Nobody, I was being humored and they didn't care. And they were just, like I said, giggling and bouncing around. And he was chuckling at everything I said. And then he just, like a father, and he just stepped forward to the toddler who thought he was in charge. And he said, okay, time to go back. And that just shocked me. I'm like, go back. I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm going back there. You don't understand. That is a really difficult place. And he goes, no, you're going back. You got things to do. And, it's kind of laughing about it. And like, yeah, you'll be fine. And he comes forward and I felt the place breaking up. I tried a few things, that I was almost 40 and what's the point? I'm pretty much used up old guy. And I tried a lot of different things, that my parents and my wife, they're strong people. They'll get over it. They'll learn to get along without me. And he laughed at all of those things. And then he said, okay, you're going back. And the place just started dematerializing. It started evaporating, swirling. And I felt myself dropping, a physical dropping in frequency. And he just sort of disassociated. He just kind of came apart in this swirling mass. And I dropped away into darkness. And it was a definite descending feeling, a drop in vibration. And I found myself down in this place and I knew I was near my body. And it was a lonely place, nothing like where I just was, not even nothing like that. And it was lonely and I was separate. I was cut off. It was dismal and you didn't want to stay there. You could feel just this dark loneliness. And I was near my body and then I was back in my body and some time went by and I started waking up slowly. The machines were, taking an automatic blood pressure machine was squeezing me every 10 or 15 minutes. And I would wake up and look at the numbers and I just watched the vital signs on these machines climb back, pulse and blood pressure. And I was, I don't know, 4 or 5 in the morning, I was sitting up looking around because it had climbed back over some hours. And a nurse came by and she's like, you're awake. And she was really shocked. And I'm like, yeah, I'm awake. I need to talk to you. And she goes, well, I got to go tell a doctor. We didn't know what was going on with you. If you were going to come back to us, this has been we've all been worried all night. And I said, okay, that's cool. You guys can all go get the doctor and we'll have a chat. But I go, but first, I looked at her and I said, what am I doing back here? I was pissed. And that must have cracked, But she was an old nurse, one of those gum chewers, and she rebounded really fast. And I told her, "Oh, what am I doing back here? I was home. I was out of this place. It was behind, and I was with my best friends, and I had bought the farm. I had died. I was sure of it." And she said, "Honey, you've been in escrow, but you fell out of escrow, and now you're back with us." And, she had her hands on my two shoulders, and she goes, "You're going to have to get your head around that." And I was talking to this medium friend, and she goes, "Oh, that nurse grounded you immediately." And I'm like, she did, because I was sad for several days, sad, a deep sadness that was in every cell. But I was also, okay, I got to get back in this life, and, as they say, chop wood and carry water, and get up every day and do the things to keep this life going, because, I was sent back for some reason. And I think that reason is unfolding right now, especially in the last year. And I'll make a prediction. This is going to, some of these videos, they're seeing 100,000 views, and some of them are millions. It's going to go absolutely crazy worldwide in the coming years, because I think there's going to be a deep interest in who are we really? We don't have the answers in the mainstream, and that's what's happening now. It's just trickling in, but the interest is going to take off like a wildfire.
My guest from my 66th episode is perhaps one of the more famous and well-known experts I've ever had the privilege of appearing on my show, Dr.Ervin Lazslo. So I'll just let this short introductory video tell you all about him.
Who is Ervin Lazslo? He is one of the most extraordinary thinkers of our time. Did you know this true modern-day genius, twice nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, has authored more than 90 books, which have been translated into 24 languages, and has published in excess of 400 articles and research papers. The founder of the Club of Budapest, an international think and do tank, whose membership includes Desmond Tutu, Jane Goodall, Deepak Chopra, Sharon Stone, Mikhail Gorbachev, Muhammad Yunus, and the Dalai Lama, among many others. After 5 decades of research, Ervin Lazslo is now universally regarded as the preeminent expert in the evolving field of quantum consciousness.
What is it that science and spiritual teachings are now agreeing on?
I think quantum sciences are practically a spiritual discipline. When you look at the implications of the philosophy of the findings of quantum sciences, it says things like nothing is separate from anything else. Everything is connected, not only connected by signals, it's connected intrinsically. So what happens to one automatically, spontaneously happens also to the other. This you know in experiments. And connection is one thing, memory is another one. You know that information cannot be destroyed. Information is in a field, in a quantum field, and that field conserves information. So nothing completely disappears from this world. Anything that happened has its traces, some places, space and time. I don't know if quantum physics can talk about a higher intelligence, but I think it can talk about a motivation, a dynamic tendency, which is in nature, rather than nature being a mechanical response to outside influences. It's not just you push and pull at nature and then you get some response. Nature has its autonomy, and it is a dynamic enterprise, dynamic movement towards higher levels of coherence. It's an important concept. Einstein said was the universe is almost miraculous because it's coherent enough so that we can understand it. Probably not all of it, but we understand the gist of it. And that's remarkable because the universe started as a series of random events, clouds of inert gases swirling about after the Big Bang. And then it became more and more cooled and condensed and particles came to be, and then atoms and molecules and cells and living organisms. And the whole evolution took place. So the universe is evolution bound. It's an evolutionary enterprise. It's not a classical Newtonian universe in which everything is prescribed by iron and laws wrought in marble, as it were. This is an open universe that encompassing it takes us with it. We can participate in it. It's a living universe. It's a participatory universe. It can't be more spiritual than that. And when you say this about the new quantum sciences.
The subject of consciousness absolutely fascinates me, and on episode number 169, we met and talked with an expert in this field and the author of the book, The Enigma of Consciousness, Dean Graves.
The process of healing is the process of enlightenment. Enlightenment is an often misunderstood topic, and because of the Buddha's successes and characterization of enlightenment, most people have the perspective that enlightenment is a destination. It's not a destination, it's a process, and everyone is enlightened to the degree that they have allowed themselves to become enlightened. Enlightenment is synonymous with the process of consciousness evolution. And so consequently, we have the end goal of being Buddha-like, but that's not the objective of this range of consciousness that we experience. And so consequently, my effort is to break those paradigms that people have about the elusiveness of enlightenment, and understand that even in the course of our daily lives, they are participating in the enlightenment process. But if you're not aware of that, if you're not knowledgeable of what it is that you're truly trying to do with your daily activities and experiences, it falls on deaf ears.
Consciousness is obviously a big topic. Now, I mean, in today's modern world where there's just so much distraction, I mean, if you just walked up to 10 people on a street corner and said, well, what is consciousness? I'm guessing most people say, huh?
Yeah, well, it's not just 10 people on the street, it's our entire academic community as well that perceives themselves as intellectually pursuing the question of what consciousness is. And the difficulty that we have as the 10 people walking along the street, and as well as the academic portion of our population, is we perceive limitedly that our existence is in the physical world. But because we participate simultaneously in a parallel existence in the metaphysical world, and as long as we deny that or are unaware of that, then we will fail to recognize and understand what consciousness is.
Now, the interesting thing about consciousness, let me ask this, and maybe this is the wrong way to go. How would you define, what would be your best definition of consciousness itself?
Consciousness defined, and this will require some unpacking. Consciousness is our creatorness intoxicated with free will. Philosophers for centuries have debated what free will, whether we have the choice of turning right or turning left, or where we're predetermined, and so forth. And all of that is a product of free will. Free will is the perception of separation. We have the choice of choosing to go right or left because we perceive ourselves as an autonomous being, and we perceive all of our surroundings to be autonomous and separate from us. The reality is there is no separation other than in our perception. And so consequently, free will becomes a remarkably productive tool for fulfilling the purpose of creation. And the purpose of creation, very simply, is so that the one infinite creator might know itself by experiencing itself. Creation began with that desire on the part of the one infinite creator. And to accomplish that, the creator projected free will into a conceptual part of itself, which created the first object-subject relationship. The one infinite creator becomes the creator as the object, and the projected self becomes the creator as the subject. And so consequently, by observing itself as the creator as the subject, which is conceptual, it could observe itself, interact with itself, and explore itself. Now, the creator as the subject is consciousness. That's what consciousness is. And the creator as the subject began to fulfill the purpose of creation by replicating that same process, but with each declining, with each fractal of itself that it created. It did so by increasing the degree of intoxication of free will, and free will functions just like whiskey. It lowers our awareness. You know, you get drunk and your awareness is significantly less than what it would be if you weren't intoxicated. So by lowering awareness, we have the structure of creation that is made possible by free will and by the intoxication of free will. That notwithstanding, everything that we experience is a lesser degree of consciousness that is intoxicated to varying degrees, and consequently the awareness is diminished with each descending level of consciousness.
In episode number 70, we met metaphysician Dr. Susan Corso. She has had a spiritual consulting practice for 40 years and is an expert on managing the human energy system through work with the chakras. She holds the truth that all beings have innate, indestructible integrity. She is a gifted medical intuitive and is the founder of I&, a spiritual community dedicated to creating a world that works for everyone.
So finally, when I got to be a grown-up and went through some of my own trauma, and this is dramatic, forewarned please, I lost a son the day he was born. And ow. And that was finally when I went straight to headquarters. Do not pass go. No mediators, no priests, no rabbis, no imams, no nothing. I said, excuse me, God, children don't die before their parents. Wrong. Well, my child did die. And I talk about a T in the road. Wow. So I had to dig deeper than I knew I even had. After about 9 months, I realized I wasn't healing. And one day I was sitting in meditation and this woman showed up in my third eye and she said, hi. I said, hi. She said, I'm Mary. I said, hi, Mary. No idea, right? She finally said, Jesus, Mom? What? I was a nice Jewish girl. What? And then she vanished. Well, every single day for 9 months, she checked on me. Never said a word. Came into my meditation every single day for 9 months. At the end of 9 months, she said to me, do you want to know how I did it? And I knew immediately what she meant, how she gave up her son. I said, yes, I want to know. And she said the words that changed my whole life. She said, I gave him away. 4 words. I gave him away. And that day, I gave away my son, whose name was Isaac. And we named him Isaac because Isaac means she laughed in Hebrew, because I wanted there to be joy from his life. And I gave Isaac back to divinity. And I healed. and I went to work for the Blessed Virgin Mary. She saved me from a trajectory that I could not see how to stop, because the grief was overwhelming. Now, mind you, I've been much younger and started with a whole lot of grief. My dad's death. Well, at 5, in 1963, at age 5, they say things like, "Daddy's not coming to your birthday party." Not, "Your father is dead." Dr. Spock didn't believe in telling children those sorts of truths, right? That he thought children couldn't deal with that. Well, wow, I had a bucket of grief that I fell into when my son died.
Oh, I was going to say at 5. Wow.
No, when my son died, though, I realized that there was a line of grief all the way back in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, here's kind of a woo thing. All of the women on my mother's side of the family lost their firstborn child.
Oh.
Every single one that I could find. My mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, her mother, all the way back. I thought, wow, okay, let's stop this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was my motivation for getting well. I went back to God. I said, listen, nope. We don't have to lose our firstborn sons or daughters anymore. No, the buck stops here. Well, it did. My niece had a beautiful baby girl not months later, and she's graduating from college now. So I did something right.
Yeah, you cleared the family Akashic records, huh?
I did, and not even understanding what that was, that I was doing ancestral healing. I had no idea. I just was like with my hands on my hips screeching at God. No. Well, when you're that clear, things get clear.
Episode number 154 featured a frequent guest to World Awakenings, the amazing Eleni Yiambilis. Eleni's story of resurrecting herself from extreme trauma and addiction to now being a well-known life coach, author, healer, and inspirational icon is off the charts incredible. Her energy, love, and truth are infectious in a beautiful way. Let's start with a little background on your amazing life to help us understand how you arrived at this point where you're doing so many lovely things and creating a fulfilling life. But it wasn't always that way when you were younger, right?
For me, I didn't have one of those really picture perfect type childhoods, but the longer I'm on this earth, most of us don't. I grew up in a house that had a lot of abuse and alcoholism, which I know a lot of our listeners can relate to. That kind of spiritual malady and disease just affects so many families worldwide. So I grew up in a house that just wasn't really stable. And by the time I was in my early 20s, I too had fallen into drug use and drug addiction, which led me to just make, you know how that goes. It snowballs, poor decisions. And at 22 years old, I found myself tied up in a basement, literally lucky to escape with my life. And I was homeless after that. It just was one of those very toxic kind of explosions at a young age. And then I lived in my Jeep. But Carl, this is where the story gets exciting. And this is the seed of possibility that I love to share. Why do I even, go back to that part of my story? Because I really don't identify with that version of myself anymore. Because things can change so quickly, my friends. They can change so quickly. There's a lot of programming out there that makes it feel like it's going to take a long time and be daunting to overcome addiction or overcome depression or beat a disease. But really, listen to this part of my story. If you were seeking some inspiration there, I was living in my car. And I just remember that my mom had a book called The Secret. And I remember reading that book. And the one thing that stood out in my memory in that moment, call it my higher self, plucking that neural pathway right up for me, was the power of gratitude. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to get sober. I'm done using. and I'm going to change my life with gratitude. I made a firm decision in that moment. I lived in my Jeep with my cat. She was something to be grateful for. So I have this notebook, and every day I would write down that I was grateful for my cat. I was grateful that I had Led Zeppelin 2 on cassette tape with some of my favorite songs. I was grateful that there was a park where I was really starting to develop a love for fitness. I was grateful for opportunities that I had to like care for my physical vessel if I needed to shower or any of these things. And what happens? Why does that even work? Well, you get what you think about. So if you stop thinking about what's wrong and you start just celebrating and tuning into what you're grateful for, it's going to show up in different ways, more things to be grateful for. Within 1 year and a half, my life completely changed. I went from being homeless to becoming the face of wellness, mind you, drug addicted homeless, to becoming the face of health and wellness for a $1 billion company, traveling all over the country, speaking about the benefits of clean eating, knowing where your food comes from, because I fell in love with fitness and nutrition in that time span, and all of that gratitude, all of that high vibration I was then like pumping out was just coming back to me so quickly, just in one little switch. I'm jet setting all over. I have a company car, I'm flying around, I have all new clothes, I'm living in a house now. Like it's remarkable to me that a year and a half, just a drop of sand, right, in the lifespan, and how much my life had changed. From that point, I mean, a little more, we fast forward, as a mother, I decided I wanted to get back into speaking. I wanted to share my story about surviving domestic violence and overcoming drugs. I wanted people to understand that their lives could change just by changing their thoughts. And that's when I started writing in books, and I became an international best-selling author. And then that opened new doorways for me. And I began speaking abroad. In the course of all that, I'm a successful mindset coach. I'm getting to witness, I'm seeing whole new levels of healing happening in people. Like the right teachers are coming into my space. I'm seeing people clear tumors out of their body in weeks. I'm seeing traumatic brain injury reversals. I'm seeing just miracle after miracle. So I felt called to just keep creating content, keep getting this out there. Now I run group containers, hybrids, one-to-one work with groups, because the more people that understand this, that the ripple effect, they're telling it's just what's possible for us. It just creates limitlessness.
Another one of my favorite and frequent guests to the show is Sweden's Isabel Stal. Since the age of 15, Isabel has been on a spiritual awakening journey, from being a yoga instructor to becoming a life coach, and now following the path of being a shaman and spiritual leader. I love that Isabel's laugh and joy are infectious, and the fact that she is following her soul's purpose with integrity, love, and truth.
I feel like my spiritual journey, or like the whole start of my awakening, really happened when I was 15 years old, and like this really big, huge awakening happened to me, and I got so many messages of where I was supposed to go, and it's another story maybe for another time, but it did lead me to Norway as a base. It did lead me to start my business with yoga and coaching that I really wanted to. I felt like I was supposed to share and be in front of people. And that's what I kept seeing in my visions, even though I had a lot of resistance towards it because I was afraid of being seen, afraid of showing myself, afraid of using my voice. So I think in my 20s, until, before 2020, I had this cycle in Norway where I just built my yoga and coaching business. And then I was feeling that I had built a big part of what I was dreaming about, and I was helping and supporting a lot of people and had a lot of students, maybe 100 students every day that I was just, sharing my life for. But something was calling on me and telling me something deep inside was just like, there is something more, like that you're not supposed to stay here. Like you need to let it all go. And I also had a long relationship back then, and you also met him back in 2015. Mm-hmm. But I just felt like I needed to start everything over and live everything that I knew. So in 2019, before COVID happened, obviously we didn't know that was going to happen, but I knew that I had to go. So I quit my yoga business, my apartment. I sold and gave away all my things and just released everything that I had known. And booked a one-way ticket to Guatemala. Actually, I started in Guatemala and I didn't really know why. I feel like I have traveled a lot like that. It's just been like, I feel like I have to go there. I'm not sure why, but I just have to go. And a new, like, deeper journey of my awakening had started when I said yes to that journey in so many ways. And I met a student the other, like just a month ago, when I was in Guatemala, and like an old student from Norway, and she was like, "You left Norway as a yoga teacher, and now you're coming back as a medicine woman." And it was like a very beautiful way to see it, because that's been the metamorphosis of finding my medicine and understand that I carry medicine. And when I say that, I mean with frequency and as like my consciousness, and how I am able to help people through raising their frequency, raising their consciousness. And that is the medicine that I carry.
In episode number 131, we met with Dr. Ann Metz, a psychotherapist, researcher, and an educator who focuses on psychedelics. Her work focuses on utilizing the transformative power of psychedelics and non-ordinary states of consciousness for psychological and personal growth. She says working with and taking psychedelics can help you grow spiritually and expand your mind to understand there's far more to the universe than what your body's eyes can see. What about your personal experience with psychoactive plants and medicines? I mean, I read this on your original bio. I found that you had a bit of a bizarre experience taking psilocybin when you were in Oregon, and that seemed to change things for you. How did that come about?
At the time, I was actually reading this Michael Pollan book, How to Change Your Mind. And I was on a very long road trip and was really at a crossroads in my life. A relationship that I had spent a lot of time investing in, and I sort of had assumed would go forward, really started to fall apart. And I was scared to stay. I was scared to leave. And I just really, really felt sort of stuck. And there didn't seem like there was going to be a resolution. And happened to, bump into somebody who had some psilocybin. And, this is not something I would recommend to any viewers, but I was like, well, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that could happen is, of course, it could be fentanyl, but this was actually just, a true psilocybin capsule. And, I had the experience. It was interesting. And then after the effects wore off, so I was lying in bed later that night, and I heard this very clear voice, which has never happened to me before. And it said, you can change your life. You don't have to wait for life to pick you. You can pick what you want. And as small and quotidian and everyday as that sort of thing sounds, to me, it was really profound. And I think that, I had been, as a woman from a family that had fairly traditional gender values, I have always just kind of waited for life to happen. I've waited to be picked for jobs. I've waited to be picked for someone's girlfriend. I've waited to be picked for that. And so there's just been this sort of sense of waiting. And I never really had an awareness that I had autonomy, and that there was some choice, and I could pick what I wanted in my life. And so this just was this big idea that I carried with me. And I didn't know what it meant, and I didn't know how to apply it or integrate it into the rest of my life. And so over the course of maybe the next 9 months, I talked a lot about this experience with the therapist that I was seeing at the time. And eventually I sort of realized that, I need to get out of this relationship. I need to sort of choose my own life. And that was certainly a piece of it. And then the other piece of it, of course, was choosing where I wanted to live my life. And that's, of course, landed me in this spectacular place of Taos, 3 years later. So, so it was a really profound experience. And, I think that as somebody who had done a lot of therapy in the past and was always wanting to work on myself, I was really blown away by how much faster things were happening, that I was feeling like I was really able to kind of get to the root of what was going on with me. And I was able to explore kind of early childhood messages that I had that, kind of gave me this idea that I didn't need to pick my own life, and really have compassion for them and sort of nurture those small parts of myself, so that the adult me would be able to operate in the world with more, I would say, confidence and effectiveness.
What a beautiful blossoming for you, from waiting for things to happen and come to you, to realizing I can choose to direct life and everything. I do have one real quick question. I mean, this is just my own curiosity. Psilocybin, isn't that a natural mushroom? Isn't that something American Indians and native cultures use?
Oh, yes. So psilocybin is the active psychedelic ingredient that can be found in a certain class of mushrooms that we would think of being as magic mushrooms. But, magic mushrooms, psilocybin, fancy fungus, if you will, have been used for, really thousands and thousands of years, and have, there's evidence to suggest that not only were they used by Native Americans, here in North America, but also, in South America and indigenous peoples all around the world, but also within the Greek and Roman traditions, that there was sort of a sacrament that the Greeks would take, that would give them an experience of dying before they died. And there are some people that sort of speculate that was a mushroom experience that the temple at Eleusis would offer people, and that was this great spiritual experience. So even within Western traditions, psilocybin and fermented things have had a role in spiritual growth and spiritual development.
Wow, even the Greeks did it. Maybe Plato was doing shrooms, huh?
Well, I think he probably was, I think that we sometimes write the Greeks off. We think like, oh gosh, they had this really sophisticated government and they were so advanced in literature and in music. And then you think about Greek and Roman religion and it just feels kind of silly. It's like they think these gods did these things. And so I think that there's a more complicated story that we just kind of don't know because the record has been lost. And I think it has to do something with the spiritual mushroom sacrament.
And in episode number 169, we featured an extraordinary conversation with an extraordinary man, Adrian Emery. From Australia, Adrian is an author, entrepreneur, business owner, environmentalist, and keen gardener. And he has devoted his life to creating a new philosophy called LifeWorks, based on the understanding, laws, principles, and codes that make life work easily, effortlessly, and successfully. He has also developed a coaching modality called Tao Tuning, designed to assist others to find their life purpose. So I'm very curious as how your life brought you to that path, and what was your very early life like, where you grew up in Australia? What was that like?
Well, it's very interesting. That's a great question, Carl, because I like to say, I don't know if you know the line by John Lennon that says, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. And I've discovered in my life that whenever I, Adrian, want to do something, or, the ego thinks that it needs or wants to do this, it never works. But when I just allow it to flow, when I allow life to take the lead. So I actually had the first vegetarian restaurant in Australia. But I had no intention. I cannot consciously say that one day I sat down and thought or intended this is what I was going to do. It happened. But when I say it happened, I do believe in what I teach is that we need to be able to listen to our intuition. We need to be able to go within and decide for ourselves. So a lot of people that think going with the flow is like, oh, she'll be cool, man, everything's cool. No, I think you still need to exercise choice. You still need to have your hands very much on the steering wheel and knowing where you're going or what you're doing. But by the same token, you need to be guided by divine providence or whatever you want to call it. So to me, it's a partnership. It's a very, very strong partnership between your consciousness, and I like to call it the corporate structure of consciousness, because I believe that there are many voices within. There's not just the rationality of reason and logic. There's also the intuition. There's also gut feeling. There's also gestalts of awareness. So going back to the very beginning, I can very eloquently talk about all of this stuff now, 50 years later. But in the very beginning, I can assure you it was quite painful to completely buck the system. I can remember actually upstairs in my first restaurant, as I was 20 years old, my father sitting on seagrass matting, begging me not to throw my life away by doing this. And yet I was enrolled in the most sophisticated university that I've ever known. I went from the University of Sydney to this very small vegetarian restaurant. But that restaurant taught me so much about life principles and, you know, as I said, working with one's intuition, not just blindly following, but working, developing this partnership, this collaboration. And look, I don't really care what you call it. I think you can call it God, you can call it divine intelligence, you can call it the universe. And hopefully we all do have our own personal connection with that almighty being. But to me, it's a partnership. And I think that's the difference between what I'm trying to convey and teach to the old religions, that in the old religions, we're very much beholden. We're almost like a football being kicked between God and the devil, whereas I believe we have a lot more agency. As you said in your intro, you know, you can create the life of your dreams. You can create a life that you enjoy and enjoy your life. But you need to get up in the morning, you need to awaken, and you need to participate. So it happened. And then once I was on that path, I just knew I had to learn as much as I possibly could. And I've spent the last 50 years learning. I still believe I'm a novice. It's like the more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn. But it's an exquisite dance. I love it. And I'm very passionate about trying to pass it on to people because, as you say, you know, if you can love your life and live the life of your dreams, everything changes. It's just a remarkable awakening.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.